I was thinking about the concept of pretending to be happy, or putting on a happy face even if you don't feel that great. And there are competing perspectives in the psychological, spiritual realms in terms of whether or not there is a usefulness to this. One side of the approach to this is the idea of fake it till you make it, or where attention goes, energy flows. These kinds of ideas that say that if you practice being happy and you know, even if you're not feeling that great, then you act as if you are, then you will become more so through focusing upon that. And the other side of this, it's not really a debate, but the other side of this competing perspective is just be authentic. No matter where you're at, be where you're at and be there fully. I remember when I was a grad student in counseling, friend of a friend, I heard from my friend that a woman he knew was consciously experiencing her depression, was not fighting against it. And I thought, that's interesting. And it takes a certain kind of courage to admit that to those around you. That's where you're at. That's how you're feeling. And she was learning from it and going into it. And there was another perspective in the client-centered or humanistic perspective of psychology, which was founded by one of my favorite psychologists and most amazing people that ever lived, I think, Carl Rogers. He said that mental health is congruence between who you are, how you perceive yourself, and how others perceive you. So with that definition, if you're not feeling well and you are acting as if everything's fine and others perceive you as if everything's fine, there is an incongruence between what's going on and what is perceived. So the way I look at this topic is that you can actually utilize perspectives from both. You can admit where you're at, but then not fixate upon where you're at if you're not where you want to be, and do what you can to change things. So for example, when I woke up this morning, I looked on my little iPhone weather application and saw that the forecast for the next 5 or 6 days is rain, and I was honest with myself in terms of saying that's a bummer. But I at the same time did not start telling myself I'm going to be sad for the next 5 or 6 days. Well, I told myself, well, these forecasts tend to be inaccurate for the long run, and even when there is rain in the forecast, that doesn't mean it's raining constantly. There are breaks in that. And even though I prefer sunny days, there's also things that can occur every day that are pleasurable regardless of what's going on in the weather. So there's no need to fixate upon that. So I could have just told myself things are going to be horrible, but instead focusing on, what is clearly a reality of the situation is that things could vary. They're not all accurate. Accuracy is questionable. And how I perceive the weather has a large degree of how I experience, how I feel if it's gray and rainy outside. So there's things that you can do to change your focus even while admitting where you're at. Now, one of the things I reflected upon in preparing for this topic was the idea of where you work and how it is often, especially if you work with public in any respect, or are surrounded by coworkers who you feel you have to perform for, this can really drive people into a performance of pretending to be happy and put on a show even if they're not feeling that great. And if you are in that situation and you have to play politics, so to speak, it's good to keep in mind what you're doing. You might feel that it is consciously best to not go into the details of any darkness that you're experiencing in a workplace, but at the same time, don't buy into your performance. Understand what you're doing consciously so you don't create a conflict between how you're experiencing yourself and what you're saying and what you're doing around others. I was also reflecting upon the idea that happiness itself is a concept that everyone defines that differently, and you can say there are certain people that feel happy all the time, like some monk that just feels kind of a good vibe and a peaceful mind. But a lot of times happiness is used to describe an internal reaction to an external event. And so it exists in the world of contrasts and dichotomies. So I look at the spirit realm as something that is all one, and the physical world is something that exists in terms of contrasts, and that it came into existence, this realm of contrast, to better define who we truly are, which is spirit, which is oneness, which is peace, which is, an ongoing, non-roller coaster type existence. And so, if you experience kind of an addiction to happiness based on external events going the way you want them to, then that's a setup for failure, because the experience of happiness, as it's generally defined, only occurs in contrast to that which it is not, which would be sadness, disappointment, frustration, anger, those kinds of experiences that are often reactions to external events not going the way you want them to. So I find for myself that as opposed to saying I want to be happy all the time, I focus upon being peaceful, which means gaining better mastery of my reaction to that which is happening in the world around me, and controlling my thoughts, practicing focus upon having reactions that are going to produce more peacefulness, because I do believe that peace is a more attainable and maintainable state of being than saying I'm happy all the time. And my intuition often tells me people that act like they're happy all the time and things are going well all the time are often suppressing an aspect of their experience because they want to be a performer. And a lot of what we see in the media is a performance. It's not just a performance when an actor is in a film, but when he or she is being interviewed, it's a performance as well. And so if these are our role models, then that can carry over into our life, and so it's a performance all the time and not really an authentic experience. And I do believe that we're here to have an authentic experience and to be as honest as possible with ourselves and those that we consider to be in our community. So these are my thoughts, and I hope you find them useful, and thanks for listening.